The Lives of the Saints by Father Alban Butler, February 1st, St. Henry Morse SJ. Henry Morse was born in 1595 in the region of East Anglia and was educated in the Protestant faith by his parents, who belonged to the strict rural nobility. While studying law in London, he decided to convert to Catholicism and at the age of 23 fled England for refuge in France, where he was baptized in the Church of Douai. There he began his studies, determined to embrace the priesthood, and completed them at the Venerabile in Rome, where he was ordained. In 1624, he returned to England, and shortly after landing at Newcastle, he was arrested and imprisoned in York Castle. Before leaving Rome, he had obtained the consent of the Father General of the Society of Jesus to arrange for his admission to the Jesuit order in England, and, as if by a design of Providence, in York prison he found as his cellmate the Jesuit priest John Robinson, so that during the 3 years he was imprisoned, Henry Morse made his novitiate. Thanks to Father Robinson's request, right there in the cell, he pronounced his simple vows. Shortly thereafter, Henry was released and exiled to Flanders, where he acted as chaplain and missionary among the English soldiers serving the King of Spain there. At the end of 1633, Father Morse returned clandestinely to England, and under the false name of Cuthbert Claxton exercised his ministry in London. Very soon he had the opportunity to be very active during the plague epidemic that struck the city between 1636 and 1637. Morse had a list of 400 Catholic and Protestant families affected by the disease, whom he visited regularly, bringing them material and spiritual help. His selfless charity made such a deep impression that, in less than a year, 100 of those Anglican families were reconciled with the Catholic Church. So enthusiastic was our blessed in the performance of his merciful task that he contracted the plague 3 times and recovered 3 times to return to the work, until his superiors admonished him, telling him that he should moderate his zeal. It was precisely at that time that the authorities discovered Father Morse's identity and apprehended him again, accusing him of being a priest and of having perverted about 500 of Her Majesty's Protestant subjects in and out of the parish of St. Giles of the Fields, London. The accused pleaded guilty to the first charge, but not to the second, and fortunately, before sentence was pronounced, Queen Henrietta Maria intervened on his behalf, and Father Morse was released on bail of 10,000 florins. Shortly thereafter, when the royal proclamation was issued imposing a deadline of April 7, 1641, for all Catholic priests to leave the country, Henry Morse felt obliged to leave so as not to compromise his sureties, and so he again undertook his missionary work among the English troops in Flanders. 2 years later, in 1643, he left Ghent for England, and for 18 months managed to evade surveillance and carry on his ministry in the north of the country until he was apprehended on suspicion while visiting a sick man on the borders of Cumberland. From there he was taken to Durham, but on the way, while staying overnight at the house of one of his captors, the latter's wife, who was a Catholic. Morse's wife, who was a Catholic, helped him to escape. His freedom did not last long because 6 weeks later he was arrested again, and after some time in Durham prison, he was transferred, with an escort, to Newcastle prison in London. There he had to appear before the High Court to be tried as a recidivist criminal, and was sentenced to death without appeal, in view of the fact that he had again committed the crime for which he had been tried 9 years before. On the day appointed for execution, Father Morse celebrated the votive Mass of the Holy Trinity in the cell before he was driven in the fateful cart to the scaffold in Tyburn Square. There, mixed with the usual crowd of onlookers, were the ambassadors of Catholic countries, such as France, Spain, and Portugal, with their entourages, to pay homage to the martyr. This one, already placed under the gallows and with the rope around his neck, spoke to those present with a serene voice, affirming that he died for his religion and only for having always worked for the welfare of his fellow citizens, denying categorically that he had organized or participated in any conspiracy against the king, as his accusers claimed. He then prayed aloud for the salvation of his soul, for that of his persecutors, and for the kingdom of England, and then signaled that he was ready. The cart was quickly removed, and Father Henry Morse SJ was left hanging from the rope. He died by hanging on February 1st, 1645. Among the various relics of English martyrs that the Spanish ambassador, Count of Egmont, gathered to take abroad, where they were to be duly venerated, there were especially those of Blessed Henry Morse.